Thank you, Laurel. Good evening, everyone. Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, political leader of the People's National Movement and Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the second time. My cabinet colleague and Member of Parliament for St. Anne's East, Dr. the Honorable Nyan Gadsby Dolly, Minister of Education, our Public Relations Officer, Senator Laurel Lizama Leasing, the Mayor of Port of Spain, all other distinguished invited guests, MPs, seen one in the back there, Member of Parliament for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, my cabinet colleague and Minister of National Security, the viewing public, the media. Before I get into my presentation, I want to deal with a matter that came up in the Parliament. I think it was yesterday. You know, we have some characters in the Parliament. Unfortunately, some of these remnants, as I called them yesterday, have found their way into this Parliament. The leader of the opposition was not able to get rid of all of them. Some of them somehow were able to find their way into the current Parliament. And one of them is a fellow called Rudal Monilal. Dr. Rudal Monilal. Let me give him his proper respects. And he has a habit of coming to Parliament to bust a mark. That's all he does. He does two things. He comes and he makes scandalous allegations without a shred of evidence, and he makes jokes. So yesterday I described him as a political comedian. I might have described him as the Parliament jester, but I figured the speaker would have pulled me up. So I thought political comedian was appropriate. But he made one of his usual scandalous personal attacks against our political leader. He pulled out some document, a circular from the Ministry of Finance, which had revised the rates paid to officials of the government, senior public servants, and other public officials who travel abroad on public business. And in 2017, the Minister of Finance, myself, I had issued a circular which amended the rates that were available to persons traveling abroad on public business, giving various rates for a per diem allowance. Because in the past, years ago, there was something called an accountable allowance, so that persons who travel on public business would get an advance, and when they came back, they had to account for every cent and produce bills. It all became very, very tedious, and quite a few people ended up owing a lot of money to the Treasury because they were not able to produce the bills, where they had lost the bills and so on. So years ago, the system was changed to create something called a per diem allowance based on an assessment of the average cost of hotel accommodation, meals, ground transportation, and other expenses that a public official would have, as in the case of our Prime Minister, who had gone to Houston, had gone to Ghana, had gone to the United Kingdom to have very high-level negotiations with the heads of oil companies. And let me just make the point, those high-level discussions that Dr. Rowley engaged in resulted in a payment to the Treasury in 2019 of enhanced oil revenue of $1.8 billion. $1.8 billion we got from the oil companies as compensation for previous arrangements in terms of taxes and so on. 1.8 billion, $1,800 million. But Dr. Monilal was not interested in that $1.8 billion that helped us pay public servant salaries, pay all senior citizens' pension, pay public assistance, pay teachers. None of that. He was not interested in that $1.8 billion that came out of those visits. He was vexed because he saw a circular that said the Prime Minister was now entitled to a particular per diem allowance, a couple £100 a day. And the document said that it was effective, it was a 2017 document, and the document said it was effective 2016. So he insinuated that that was done deliberately in 2017 to give the Prime Minister back pay. That's the kind of nastiness we have to deal with in the Parliament. It was a total lie. Prime Minister never received any back pay. And the reason why it was made retroactive for 2016, because you see these characters, they only come with piece of the story, yeah? It sounds good, was because I had also issued a circular in 2016. Same time, same period, the middle of 2016, around June, July 2016, I had issued a circular. And there were some errors in the circular, so I corrected it the following year in 2017 with a new circular and said that this now supersedes the previous one. That's all that happened, a routine administrative matter. But according to the member for Oropochis, that was done to give Dr. Rowley back pay. You hear lie? That is lie. So I just want to correct that. Let me now go into the substance of the meeting tonight. It is normal for the PNM to have a meeting after the budget is read and after the debate is over. Sometimes we have it when we're in opposition, we have it on the night that the budget is delivered. When we're in government, we have it a few days later and so on. This is a standard feature and it's designed to educate the population. Because if you listen to what is going on in Parliament and you read what is in the papers, you would never get a proper appreciation of what your government is doing for you. Because it's only bacchanal in the Parliament and bacchanal in the papers. They don't deal with the substantive issues. So let me deal with the substantive issues. This budget 2021 was very difficult because we're coming out of a situation where this virus just came out of nowhere and shut the whole world down. Just like that. I mean, I'm a fairly young man. I'm 63. And in my entire 63 years, I don't remember anything like this. I remember as Minister of Health, about 20 years ago, there was something called SARS. And as Minister of Health, I had to declare SARS an infectious disease. And I remember going to Parliament to make the declaration. But SARS fizzled out in about 2 months. It didn't have any serious effect on anyone. It didn't lock down the world. It didn't lock countries down. This thing, I have never experienced anything like this. So that this just came out of nowhere. And we in Trinidad and Tobago were faced with a double whammy because there was a trade war between two of the main oil-producing countries in the world. There are 3 main countries that produce the bulk of the world's oil. That is the United States of America, Russia, Russian Federation, and Saudi Arabia. They each produce about the same amount of oil, about 10 million barrels a day. And that is the bulk of the world's oil. And they're always fighting. And they're always trying to drive the other one out of business. For the last couple of years, there was a trade war between the United States and Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia tried to drive the shale oil industry in the United States out of business by pushing the price of oil down to the point where it would become uneconomical for shale oil producers to produce oil. And a lot of them did, in fact, go out of business. That was in 2016, when the price of oil dropped to $26 a barrel from $100 just 18 months before that. This time it was Russia and Saudi Arabia fighting to see who better than who. And it just sent the price of oil down. We started off the year with oil over $60 a barrel. $62, $63, well in line with our budget projections. And then 50, 40, 30, 20, and then COVID. And the unthinkable happened. One day the price of oil went to zero, and then it went negative, which meant people were paying other people to get rid of the oil. They had no more storage in their tanks in the United States to keep it, so they're paying people to come and take it. So it went below zero. And then it took a little while to recover, 10, 15, 20, 30, and now it's just running at about $40. Our budget wasn't based on $40, it was based on $65. And while all of that was going on, the price of natural gas was just dipping $3, $2.50, $2, $1.80, $1.70. So we got hit by this war between Saudi Arabia and Russia and by an oversupply of natural gas in the world. And then came COVID. The end result of all of that was that we lost more than $10 billion in revenue. We lost 13, actually. The estimates of revenue for the last fiscal year, which ended September, $47 billion. We end up with 34. We lost $13 billion in many different ways. We lost royalty, because royalty is based on the price of oil and the price of gas, and it had gone to almost nothing. No petroleum profits tax, because they're not making any profit. No supplemental petroleum profits tax, because there's a threshold of $50. You have to get above $50 a barrel before you get supplemental petroleum tax. So it was below 50. Then corporation tax went down because people had to shutter their business, close down, lock down, send home workers, stop working. Individual income tax went down because people weren't working. Value-added tax went down because people weren't buying, and so on. So we lost $13 billion. Ended up with a budget deficit. We had to find all sorts of different ways to deal with it. And we were very innovative. We went to the parliament, we adjusted the law with respect to the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, and gave us the legal authority to withdraw up to $1.5 billion if you have a dangerous infectious disease like this coronavirus. And we added in some other things that had been long overdue, like if you have a massive earthquake, for example, that destroys your infrastructure, you could withdraw from the Heritage Fund. So we did that. And then a lot of multilateral institutions came forward to help us and offered us money. The Andean Bank of Latin America, the Inter-American Development Bank, the World Bank, they all stepped up to the plate and offered us funding and very rapid disbursing funding as well. So we came through fiscal 2020. We made it to September 30th, being able to pay salaries, keep the entire country running. We had to put extra money into the health sector because we had to build a parallel health system. We had to commission the Point Fortin Hospital, commission the Arima Hospital, create all sorts of special facilities in Cowra, in Cuba, etc., step-down facilities in various places. We did all of that. We had to access supplies, PPE, special equipment for the doctors, oxygen, all sorts of things. We did it. We were able to do that and come through to September 2020 without any trauma per se. We also recognize that people were hurting. So like all other countries in the world, we came up with a package of relief to help people at the individual level. In fact, we were one of the first countries to announce a salary grant before many other countries followed suit. So we came up with a salary relief grant, an income support grant, rent relief grant, food support. We gave money to the churches because they have a big network of distribution, and in fact they distributed almost 50,000 hampers in a very short space of time. Then we recognized we had to help business, so we came up with a soft loan facility for small and medium enterprises, zero interest loan, moratorium on payments for 2 years. We came up with a credit union loan financing facility, a hotel accommodation upgrade facility in Tobago, and so on. There were so many things we did. The other thing that we did is that we accelerated the payment of individual income tax refunds to put money in people's pockets. Normally, people would not get their tax refunds immediately. We made sure we cleared every single individual income tax refund, every single one. Then we cleared off every VAT refund, up to $500,000 in cash. And then we issued a series of bonds, fully tradable, fully convertible. People could go straight to the bank with the bond and get 100 cents on the dollar. We issued $3 billion in VAT refund bonds. So we did many different things. But in all of that, we were heading towards a general election because it was due this year. So we were fortunate the Prime Minister had appointed a committee of conscientious citizens, public servants, ministers, etc., called the Roadmap to Recovery. And that did assist to quite an extent in terms of creating a manifesto, which is grounded in core P&M policies and also the way forward. And if you look at this year's budget, it flows from the manifesto. It doesn't stand alone. And one of the key issues in the manifesto is this whole question of creating a digital society, which we must do if we are going to survive in this new era of distance learning and remote meetings and so on, and physical distancing. We don't know how long this is going to happen. We have to digitize. So if you look in our manifesto, you see a significant section in the manifesto is devoted to the whole question of creating a digital society. And we have a number of projects. So the budget is a natural follow-through on the manifesto. When you look in the manifesto, we make a commitment that we have to digitize the entire public service so that as many government services as is possible would be online, and we're doing it in stages. And I have to give, that is the MP for Port of Spain North in the back there, right? I have to give a little shout out to the MP for Port of Spain North. He is right in front of everybody because he has created a system. It's a intermediate step towards full digitization, but he has created a system for passport renewal where you can fill out the requisite forms and so on, go to the passport office with a TT post envelope, give it to them, and a week later or 2 weeks later, you get your passport. 4 days, all right. He boasted, he said 4 days, all right, all right. I know it's 4 days for the first one. I hope the rest of them come in 4 days. Eh? But the fact is, that is unheard of in Trinidad and Tobago. Give your MP a round of applause. Unheard of. Unheard of. And the next thing that we committed to in the manifesto, and you hear it following through in the budget statement, is the whole question of what is called a national e-identity, national electronic identity. And it's for many reasons. First reason is to make it easier. So you'll have one single electronic identity, as people have in the United States. You have a social security number, and so many services are tied to that. There's so many things you can access in the United States once you have a social security number. So it's the same concept. And so it's to allow you to easily access government services with this unique electronic identity. But what it will also do for us is avoid duplication. Because there are a lot of people who double dip. They go from one ministry to another ministry to another ministry to another ministry. And sometimes it's the same grant. I mean, there's a particular grant called a housing grant that is given by the Ministry of Housing, is given by the Self-Help Commission, and is given by the Ministry of Social Development. And I know people that went and get all three for the same house. So this kind of thing in this guava season, that has to come to an end. If no problem getting a grant, but you must get one, you mustn't get three. And the national electronic identity will cure that, because it will come up on the system that you have already accessed particular social services, and this is now your second application. So it's going to help us in terms of eliminating duplication within the system. We're also going to develop a national digital database so that if you need information, you want to know how to access a service, what to do, you will have this electronic database available to the public. One of the things we also decided to do, the Ministry of Public Administration, and it's in the budget, had a sort of an embryonic program, an incipient program of internet cafes, various locations around the country where the public, if you don't have a computer, you don't have access to Wi-Fi, you can go there, and as a public service, you will be able to access in the internet in this internet cafe. We have put into the budget now a significant sum of money for the Ministry of Public Administration so they can accelerate the construction of these internet facilities all over the country. But that's not all. Consistent with what the Ministry of Education is doing, and I don't know if the minister gave numbers, but I think so far at least 17,000 laptops and tablets and so on have been donated by the private sector, and I must say I'm impressed. I would not have thought our local private sector would just step up to the plate like that. You're talking about $40, $50 million. Dry soap, 17,000 computers or laptops. But we recognize there are many people who either can't afford or just don't have access to internet in their homes. So there's something called MiFi. You will have seen it. It's a mobile hotspot. It's about this big. TSCT provides one. Digicel provides one. And with that device, it has a SIM card in it. It connects to the network. And therefore, with those MiFi devices, any child, any family will now be able to connect to the internet without the need to have a hardwired connection in their home. And in this budget, we've put a sum of $45 million to supply 45,000 of these devices to underprivileged children and poor families. So these things are not happening by guess. This is all coming together as part of a plan, because we do have a very, very serious plan for modernizing Trinidad and Tobago. And some of the other things that we will be doing is digitizing the delivery of social services, procurement, tendering for goods and services, government tenders will all be online in due course. And we've given ourselves a deadline, a timetable of 2 years to get this all done. That is the mandate that has been given to the Minister of Public Administration and Digital Transformation, together with the minister in that ministry, a very experienced individual who previously was one of the top technocrats at TSTT. But that's not all. That's just part of digitalization and digitization and the move towards a digital society. The other main focus, one of the other main focuses, again coming straight out of the manifesto, in other words, this government does not operate by VAPs, is our focus on agriculture. And, you know, there's so much going on in the agriculture sector, so many incentives, but somehow something is not working. So, I mean, in discussions with the Prime Minister, we decided we had to do something, we had to try something. So, one of the things that we have decided to do, we promised it in the manifesto, that we would kickstart the agriculture sector with a significant injection of funds. We put in the manifesto that we would allocate $500 million in this fiscal year 2021 and the next one 2022, each year $500 million, for these things: access roads, irrigation and drainage systems, subsidies and crop insurance, land tenure, perhaps one of the biggest problems within the agriculture sector, water and electricity supply, ICT, digitization of agriculture itself, mechanization, wholesale and retail markets, pest and disease control, research and development, and financial support through grants and soft loans for farmers. Just some of the things. This is what the $500 million will be spent on. And you know, the other side is so bankrupt. I was listening to the leader of the opposition speaking during the budget debate, and she complained. She said, oh, the PNM said they were allocating $500 million to the agriculture sector in 2021, but I look in the estimates, I can't find it. But of course, when other people are writing your speech for you, that's why you can't find it. Right there in black and white on the head 18, Ministry of Finance, incentive for farmers, 500 million.00. Everything right there. In the estimates of expenditure, published on the Ministry of Finance website. And you know, some of these new characters that come in, they're so happy just to be there. They never thought they would be in Parliament. One of them come and repeat the same stupidness and even call me a liar and say that a lie, Imbert lie, they have no money for agriculture in the budget. Well, we will deal with that when we do the estimates of expenditure in the Standing Finance Committee, which begins tomorrow, where we go through every line item, and I will make sure to highlight that particular line item in Head 18, the Ministry of Finance, when we come to that, which is on the last day. But we had already committed to make agriculture a tax-free industry. So we thought we had to do more. And we have identified all of these things, and I can assure you this is a special interest of the Prime Minister. I remember when I was now in this PNM so many years ago, and the then Prime Minister was talking about ministerial portfolios. And I heard that Dr. Rowley is going to be the Minister of Agriculture. This is a geologist, eh? He was head of Seismic Research Unit. So I asked Mr. Manning, what he know about that? Well, little did I know, after I read his book, if any of you all have read it, from Mason Hall to Whitehall, you will understand that he grew up as a farmer. I didn't know that. And it is very important and valuable for this country that the Prime Minister is a farmer. He's a farmer right now. He has a farm right now, but he grew up as a child as a farmer. If you read the book, you will see that. And I can assure you, this $500 million will be spent properly, and you will see that tremendous boost in the agriculture sector come next year. So that's one of the other things that we promise in the manifesto, and that's what we're doing in this budget. But there's so many things we decided to do, so many things. We don't have the revenue we used to have. We decided that the time had come, because in all things there must be a balance. Decided the time had come to deal with this whole issue of water rates and electricity rates, because our water rates and our electricity rates are the lowest in this hemisphere and very close to being the lowest in the world. I mean, I can speak for myself. My water bill is $75 a month. I think I probably have one of the highest water bills in the country. I pay $300 a quarter. I feel I'm right up there, probably at the top. $300 a quarter, $75 a month. I have a feeling that that is probably among the highest water rates in the country. And a lot of people pay $100 a quarter, $25 a month, or even less. And it's time for a realistic price to be paid for water. Because we subsidize the Water and Sewerage Authority every year to the tune of over $2 billion. Last year, we had to raise a loan for $700 million to clear off arrears to desalcot, that disastrous experiment that the UNC engaged in back in the 90s. They came up with this desalination thing. And the cost of desalinated water is like 3 and 4 times the cost of the rest of the water. And it was never intended that that desalinated water would be used for domestic consumption. It was supposed to be used for industry. That was the whole point, that you build a desalination plant at tremendous expense, you buy water at tremendous expense, and you sell it to industry, and it breaks even or it makes a small profit. Well, that never happened. So what we have now is that the water from desal cut goes into the domestic water supply. It costs us over $500 million a year. And WASA had built up arrears of almost $400 million. So we went and borrowed $700 to pay off the arrears and to give them some money to pay for desalinated water last year. $700 million. And this year is the next 500 coming at us for that. And what WASA gets back for that? Maybe 100 million or less in terms of water rates. So we have been subsidizing WASA year after year, year after year, billions of dollars. And we have to make decisions at this point in time with this very difficult situation we find ourselves in. And that's one of the decisions that this government has made. And I don't think it's going to be onerous on the population. And as a caring government, of course, we always look after the people at the lowest end of the spectrum. We always look at the person at the bottom and do something for them. We did that in terms of electricity bills just a couple of years ago, that if your bill is below a certain amount, the number escapes me right now, $100 or $200, I can't remember what it was, we gave a 25% discount. And that was more than half the electricity consumers in the entire country. So PNM always looks after the people who are least able to look after themselves. But those who could pay, we expect them to pay. So that's one of the things we did. We also felt years of inefficiency at the port. It was time to deal with that too. If you ask the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Works, what percentage of expenditure at the port goes to salaries, he will tell you it's 90%, could be 95%. So every dollar they earn goes to pay wages and salaries. It is no wonder they can't invest in infrastructure, they can't upgrade their equipment, they can't modernize the port of Port-of-Spain, because virtually all the money they earn goes to pay wages and salaries. So we decided it's about time, after so many years of this, that we would invite tenders for a private sector partner to come in and assist with port operations. With respect to fuel, we also felt the time had come, because prices are low, to liberalize the petroleum fuels market, and we'll roll that out during this year. But having made all those decisions, we also realized that people were hurting. So we made a very bold decision. For months you will have heard this will be a terrible budget, a dread budget. I mean, for weeks, the TV, the radio, the editorials in newspaper saying, this is going to be a wicked budget, people will suffer. Well, we increased the personal allowance and we put $250 after tax in the pockets of 250,000 taxpayers. We decided as a government, to give up $750 million in revenue this year. Give it up. Give it to people. Give it to low-income earners. And we expect that it will be spent. It will be spent in the retail sector. It will be spent in the wholesale sector. It will stimulate economic activity. It will create jobs. And it will help everybody. It will help the person who gets the money, and it will help the people whose employment depend on consumers spending money. It's a bold experiment, but we decided to do it because we know people are hurting. So that is something that we have given to the population, and nobody was expecting that. And that is why this budget is so good, and I'm surprised myself. I said yesterday, I'm overwhelmed at the response. Because when you're close to something and you're doing things and you're consulting with groups, you're talking to the Prime Minister, you're talking to other people, and what we're going to do with this year's budget, it's so difficult to do. You're close to it, you don't really understand what's going on. But when I saw the commentary coming through, virtually every sector of the society is of the view that this is one of the best budgets we've ever had in Trinidad and Tobago. And it just shows the PNM. The PNM is an institution that has a long history of growth, development, progress, in Trinidad and Tobago. The PNM has done so much in this country. Nearly every single thing in this country was done by the PNM. Every single thing. I can't think of a single thing, a single institution that was not created by the People's National Movement in Trinidad and Tobago. A single program. I can't think of it. We created GATE. We created CDAP. We created University of Trinidad and Tobago. We established University of the West Indies here. We created the modern health sector that we have, the National Highway Network, the fast ferries to Tobago. I can't think of a single major thing in Trinidad and Tobago that was not created by the People's National Movement. And that sort of history, that sort of thought process, that institutional memory, long pants as you call it, is what has caused us to fashion and develop this National Budget 2021. And I'm very humble and proud to be the person who has been given the responsibility to deliver it. And as time unfolds, you'll see more and more things coming out. We have incentives for the construction industry. We have incentives for people who invest in technology companies, who invest in startups, who hire young people in particular. We have tax concessions for companies who hire young people in technology. That's in this year's budget. There's so much in this budget. It would take hours to explain it. So you will see it unfold as the months go by. So that we, once again, the PNM, has done what has been required of it. And once again, we are putting this country on a path to growth and recovery. Thank you.